Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. I hope everyone is doing fantastically well. Once again, joined by Quinn. Quinn, how you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah.
Good. Not even a hello there. I'm a little bit disappointed.
Well, no, like, see, that's the thing. Treat them mean, keep them keen. I can't give them the hello there every video.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That does make sense. Yeah, they'll just come to expect it, and then it won't be a treat, will it?
Exactly, right? And then you become like a performing monkey in the circus.
Oh dear. Oh dear. So Quinn, following on from the other videos we did, one of the things that we touched upon was the errated cards, wasn't it? And how the guys at Atomic Mass Games, they're going through at least the first 50 or so, but probably all over time, characters. Those that need it are getting a bit of a revamp. So we've had 4 cards spoiled already, and we thought it'd be pretty cool to take a look at 20 more that we think need a change. So our top 20, if you like, characters and a couple of gems that we think need changing. Some for the better, some for the worse. But yeah, it's quite exciting, Quinn, isn't it, that they're changing these cards and making all the characters viable and playable again.
Yeah, it is very exciting times, and I just I want Guardians to be good, man.
I really want Guardians to be good. They were I started playing Cabal, but they were my real first love in this game was Guardians. And yeah, they've never had the best leadership in the world in the game. Actually, they've always had the worst leadership in the game. Let's just put that there. Yeah, there's second to none. But I think drop off and a couple of other changes really hurt them. So yeah, it'd be really nice to see them get some buffs to help them out, because they've actually got some good individual characters, some of which we'll go into today. But so starting off then, Quinn, with one of the gems, this time for this one, the space gem. And for me, this card just isn't viable in any way, shape or form in the game at the moment. I think the threat cost is too high, and I think the power cost is probably a little bit too high as well. What are your thoughts?
I mean, for a comparison, for a single threat more, you can just have clear, and she does exactly the same thing, but has another action and can contest objectives.
Yeah, it's a lot,
Need I
isn't
say
it?
more?
So I think being able to move yourself and or a character, another allied character is not a bad thing. It's quite nice. I'd like to see 2 things on this card. For me, it has to go from a 2 threat down to a 1 threat. It's only a 1 threat card. Like you say, it's not as good as a Koye, for example, or a Rocket Raccoon or any other. I also think that I'd like to see it. It's hard to reduce it down to 1 cost in terms of the power, but I think I'd like to see it go from 3-2 to a 3-3, where you can move up
It's making it
range 3.
effectively Lockjaw's teleport. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be a fair stone then, or a fair infinity gem, and it would make it very a lot more viable.
It would be worth its cost at that point.
Yeah. So we're in agreement. Drop it down from 2 to 1, and then keep the power cost the same, but take it to 3-3 from 3-2.
Yeah.
Cool. That's an easy first one. The next gem in the list then, and this is the bane of, or has been the bane of Quinn's life for quite some time, the reality gem. Now, we just spoke about how the space gem was very overpriced. I think we're both in agreement that this is very underpriced for what it is.
I mean, it's a bit good, isn't it?
It's very good. I think for me, the simple, easy fix with this is from 1 to 2 threat. Kind of fixes the problem with this.
I think you either do 1 to 2 threat, or you make it just a generic success rather than a crit.
Yeah, that is an option, because then it doesn't trigger the additional.
It's not like cascading when you've got a Glaive's Edge Corvus rolling where 7 in 8 die faces are successes, which should never be a thing.
I think changing it from a crit for me feels bad, because one of the things I like with this is on the interact rolls. I do like the fact that you can take a Thanos or a Corvus on an alien core, and it gives you a better chance. So I'd rather see the threat go up, for me personally, rather than changing the crit result. But yeah, I'm happy with taking it from a 1 threat to a 2 threat. Feels like it balances it out then and makes it significantly more fair.
I mean, I'd be happy with it being ripped up and put in a bin, but apparently I'm not allowed to do
We've got to keep the gems.
that.
So number 18 then, and the first of our characters, and we were on the fence a little bit about this one, but he is at the upper echelon of his curve. So it's the first of our characters, and it's the first one that we are looking to downgrade ever so slightly, and that is Mr. Helmet Zemo. I know we've had feedback, haven't we, from AMG that they don't like the idea of a charge on a character that moves long. Do you think removing charge from him is too much of a nerf, or
I would probably sooner see Zemo lose the long move than the charge. It's just such a good utility power. I mean, first of all, I don't think Zemo needs to be touched at all because I like Zemo a lot. I do
well, we
think
like him a lot, but I think he's definitely above the curve, isn't he?
he's probably my favorite 3 threat in the game, but I think most of that actually comes from the fact he has strategic genius than the fact he can charge with a long move.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, or even keeping his long. I wouldn't mind them putting something in there that replaced charge, cost the same, but it was just an action, and it's this character can make a medium move action followed by an attack.
So effectively a reverse steel rush.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. So a reverse steel rush. So you get to make the move, then make an attack. Costing 2 power. That feels like it's okay.
I'd be okay with that. That is effectively getting the same thing I wanted, but with the added benefit of you still getting a long move.
Yeah, and I think are we okay with his defenses there? 3-3-4 is
They
pretty
make
good.
thematic sense.
Yeah,
Like the reason he's got 4 is because he's got his little circlet from aim. With a reroll, he is relatively tanky, but he is only 5/5 stamina, which he's the average for most 3 threats. But there are plenty of 3 threats that are higher.
yeah, but he's also got his Master Swordsman. He's got Strategic Genius. He's got his Master Swordsman. He's got Strategic Genius, which obviously counts on himself. And then he's got the Counter Strike as well. So it feels like his everything else is pretty good. I mean,
He's got layers. He's like an onion or an ogre.
he is like an ogre, yes, indeed. So Baron Zemo, we're going to get rid of his charge. We're going to replace it with a action that is a medium move followed by an attack action. And I quite like that. On to then the first of our characters who we believe needs a bit of a buff. Not massively, but a bit of a buff. And that is Thor, Prince of Asgard, or Thor Odin's son. So he's a 5-threat character, Quinn. His leadership ability is pretty good. Spend a power, remove a special condition, remove a damage. But he's very, very reliant on dice, isn't he? If you don't roll the dice on Thor, he feels like a mediocre 4-threat, maybe even a pretty good 3-threat if the dice are wrong.
Yeah, and this is sort of like, it's a sad thing about Thor is that he is so reliant on dice. For Asgard and his strike, they look incredible, but if you just don't get the results you need, he might as well just not be there. And this is sort of a thing that it's sort of a cop-out answer, but the way you fix a lot of characters that are reliant on dice is by giving them a reroll of some kind, right?
Yep.
And I don't think every character in the game needs a reroll. I think the actual inconsistency of dice in this game is quite important to how it functions. But, Thor's my favourite Avenger. I would like him to not be quite so crap.
Yeah, so I think for me, the 2 areas where he needs to look at his strike and then his for Asgard, which obviously can throw and stagger potentially, but they require damage to be dealt and or a wild to be thrown, don't they? And on only 6 dice with no dice modification, that feels bad. So I think adding in rerolls would be good. I also think he could, and I think this would also be thematic. He could pay power to add additional dice into his own rolls as well. So if he goes from a 6 to an 8 cost builder, for example, but it costs him 2 or 3 power to do that, that feels like it wouldn't be too bad
almost
either.
like he's sort of charging Mjolnir with lightning.
Exactly. Yeah, he's thrown Mjolnir up in the air, he's charged himself with lightning, and he's getting those extra couple of attack dice.
Effectively, something along the lines of a buffed version of Friday AI from Iron Man. Have it be like 3 power, gain 2 dice, and maybe just have it do the shock condition. Because I feel like Thor should do more shock.
I feel like Thor should be dishing out shock on, if what is the difference between him throwing his hammer at you and hitting you with his hammer, which is what he's going to do with his strike, right? I also think God of Thunder feels lackluster as well.
I think we'll likely see sort of an across-the-board change to area attacks where they're all reduced by 1 or 2 power just to make them more viable.
Yeah, because quite often characters will have alternative attacks that are just better, even though they're only going to be targeting one person. If you get the rerolls or something like that, they do tend to be a lot better. So what are we saying then, Quinn, for Thor? Because it's really that dice, either addition or manipulation that he needs, isn't it? Because he's so reliant on them. What are we saying then?
I do like the idea of the dice addition and then having the attack do shock as well.
Yeah.
It might be a bit intensive on his power economy, because for Asgard cost 3, like he's not going to be able to do that turn 1 or turn 2 if he charges in, which I guess could be a balancing factor. But you want him to have, he's called Point Break for a reason, right?
Well, exactly, yeah. I also wouldn't mind seeing something done with Hammer Throw. I'd maybe remove that shock and maybe make it into a bit of a builder. So cost no power, gain 1 power. I do like that on characters where they have 2 builders where it's one is guaranteed, one is, power equal to the damage dealt. Because if he does need to eke out that 1 more power then to be able to do a 4 Asgard, that feels quite nice.
Yeah, it also makes sense, right? He shouldn't be expending energy tossing the hammer around. It's what he does all day, every day.
Exactly that. So I think then, Quinn, let's say Hammer Thrower, we lose the shock, we take out the power consumption, and it's a guaranteed single power, and then we add in a buff that is either 2 or 3 cost and gives him 2 additional attack dice and gives shock.
Yeah, I think make that 3, and also, just because I feel like it might be a bit thematic, I wouldn't mind having the new version of Hammer Throw have Ricochet, just because he's throwing a hammer into someone and then it's sort of curved around and hits someone else before coming back to him.
Yeah, because we have to remember, guys, he's a 5-threat character, okay? He's the same threat level as Angela, as MODOK, as Scarlet Witch. So, yeah, I like those 3 things quite a lot. I'm happy with his defenses. 4-4-3 feels good. He's very strong, but he's not the cleverest of souls, is he? Bless him.
I mean, you'll want to talk, Rich. Also, his stamina spread is quite impressive, being 6'8".
Yes, I do like that. I like that he's again. It feels thematic, right? You beat him down, and he's gonna come back, and he's gonna be stronger. So, cool.
I don't. This is something that will or should get added in addition to everything else we've mentioned, but I wouldn't mind seeing him have some sort of defensive tech. I don't know what it'd be necessarily. Maybe sort of a lightning bolt coming out of him and just slapping you away a little bit. Something like that would be cool. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think he maybe should, but I think that's just a cool thing to consider potentially.
Yeah, it would be something to make him a little bit more survivable. Or some more survivability would be good. So moving on then to our next character that we think needs a buff, this time from the core box, and that is Iron Man. Now, as a caveat to this one, Quinn, I already think that with a certain Helios laser bombardment, Tony Stark Iron Man core box has all of a sudden become a lot more viable in lists, especially as you now are not going to include gems in your 10, and you've got 2 extra slots on your tactics cards. I think slotting him in as an extra character with that Helios feels good, but I still think there's a bit more they can do to, let's be honest, one of the headline characters in the Marvel universe today.
He's one of the big three, right? I mean, we've already mentioned one of them in Thor. We've got Iron Man in front of us now, and Steve's already got
his card, yeah.
It just makes sense, right?
Yeah. So 3 threat, which I like. I think we keep him at 3 threat. 4-3-3, 5 and 5 feels okay. Feels like 6 and 6 would be good.
That has damage reduction does make it a lot.
Oh, of course, yeah. He does have the Invincible Iron Man. Yeah, he does have the Invincible Iron Man.
The thing I'd really like to see changed about him is I would like to see his Repulse Blast maybe become like a rapid fire style attack, sort of like what we got with the mini Hulkbuster, the Iron Man that pops out of the Hulkbuster.
Okay, I was going the other way with it. I was thinking I'd like to see it potentially as a beam as opposed to. I
mean, like,
but I'm happy with either. I'm happy with either.
I would lean more towards the rapid fire simply because he does have the beam on the other side of his card.
Oh, he does have Unibeam, doesn't he? Yes, on his damage side. And actually, the beam with Friday AI, because it's the next attack action, so it'd count for every attack on the beam, wouldn't it? So that would be a little bit overpowered.
I think it'd be cool if that was like a rapid fire thing. I think Friday AI would probably have to go up a cost. Just because you can't, assuming that the Repulse Blast Rapid Fire would get you 1 power each time. I think it would have to have a trigger on it, personally. Probably just a hit, but it needs the chance to miss, potentially.
Yeah, I think you go with a hit, but I think with the Friday AI, then it kind of balances it out, doesn't it?
A little dangerous if you suddenly go 3 power, 6 dice into someone. I think if it was 4 power, I think that would be more reasonable because you have to have 4 in the first place, then you're getting 2 back, but you're doing like 6 and 6. I feel like that's okay. I'd also probably move to bring the range of it down by 1 if that were to be the case, because I mean Moon Knight's really good with his random bullshit. That is the canonical name for that attack. But I think specifically because Repulsor Blast is an energy attack, making that range 4 as well would be a little dangerous. So probably a shift down to 3, make it rapid fire, 1 power gained per attack, and then Friday AI going up by 1 potentially.
Yeah, 4 for 2 feels like a lot.
It does,
outside of Repulsor Blast, but then
in conjunction with the rapid fire, maybe bring Unibeam down by a cost. So then it's
I was just going to say bringing that down by a cost because otherwise, Repulsor Blast becomes better in most situations.
Yeah, just have it be like the 7 power it still is, and then you're throwing 8 dice beam 5 into someone that's probably better than 6 dice rapid fire. I'd
like to see something around energy attacks on Iron Man. Some form of because I'm just thinking about the thematic side of it, and he gets hit by Thor's lightning and it powers him up, right? Power now at 110%, Tony, sort of thing. So I'd like to see something on that side of it as well, but then I don't know if by putting something else extra in there, then he's starting to eke up towards that 4 threat category.
I think that would probably eke him a little bit too high because he's already got defensive tech in the form of Invincible Iron Man. I don't think adding more would necessarily be a good move.
Yeah. So we're saying then, just for clarification, Quinn, we're going to Repulsor Blast. We're going to put a rapid fire on there, triggered by a hit. Yep. We're going to take off the power equal to damage dealt, and it's going to be a single power. And then we're going to increase Friday AI from 3 to 4, and we're going to reduce the cost of Unibeam from 4 down to 3.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. That feels like it's nice.
About right.
Yeah. On to the next one then, and I think it may be the quickest one in this video, Quinn. Ghost Rider, give him immune to Incinerate.
I mean, yeah, also, there is one other sort of idea I had for Ghost Rider. Just because...
But just to clarify, he needs immune to Incinerate, right?
He's on fire. He can't be more on fire.
Yeah.
It's not how that works.
Now, I also
Dormammu's
want
made of
to.
fire. He can't be set on fire.
I also want to point out with this Quinn as well that I think we have to take into consideration, even though just on his stat card, he's one of the lesser 5 threats. He's not the worst. We'll get onto him in a bit, but he's one of the lesser ones. But he does have some of a really good tactics card, and I feel like that needs to be taken into consideration as well,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Because if you make Ghost Rider as good as an Angela or a Scarlet Witch or a MODOK, and he's then got the card that brings him back to life, that's just far too
It's not
powerful.
a good idea.
Yeah.
So Immune to Incinerate is the obvious one because
Yes.
come on, AMG, you should have seen this one coming. The other idea I had for him was potentially some sort of push on the Chains of Damnation. Like he sort of like grabbed them with the hook on the end of his chain and he's pulling them in. So like maybe sort of have it be like a short push towards this character, so he's dragging them in, ready for like a penance there or something.
See,
Also,
I like that. My issue with it is he is range 3 across the board. So there's almost no benefit
well,
to
there's
him
no
being
benefit
able to pull them in.
specifically. However, it would make him a bit more of a team player. And also just sort of repositioning a character feels like a Ghost Rider kind of thing, if that makes sense.
I like the idea, Chains of Damnation, because it's right, you're hooking them with a chain, right? I think I'd like to see that go from 3 to 4 range.
Okay, and then have it be more viable for pulling people in.
And have it more viable pulling people in. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the whole Wicked Judgment and Spirit of Vengeance thing, they don't come up very often simply because it's far too easy to punch Johnny in the face instead of someone else. Like, if they, like, I think if you keep Spirit of Vengeance sort of as it is, but maybe make it so Wicked Judgment can be used when someone attacks him, but then maybe boost its power cost by 1.
So are we saying then, Quinn, for Wicked Judgment, we want to make it so it's this character or another, so it doesn't focus the fire on him?
Then make it like 3 cost, just because if it stays at 2 cost, anytime anyone attacks them, you're probably doing that just to get a bit of chip damage, and it's probably more reliable than, say, a Counter-Strike, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing for a 5 threat to have, but it is a 5 threat that comes back, so balance that with an extra power cost, and then you've got your range 4 chains. So he's more likely to be building power because he's more likely to be using his builder, pull people in, do some cool stuff like that. Also makes him still vulnerable to ranged attacks, so outside of 3, because I think it would still be when someone within 3 attacks, like either him or a friendly.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like it. So what we're saying then is Immune to Incinerate, number 1, top of the list. Chains of Damnation, I think we keep it exactly the same, but I think we have a short push towards and we move it from a range 3 to a range 4.
Yeah, which is not keeping it exactly the same, Rich.
Well, no, sorry, I meant, yeah, actually, we're not keeping it the same at all, are we?
We're massively changing.
So 3 to 4 range, we put in a short towards push, and then Wicked Judgment, we up it from 2 to 3, but we make it on anybody, both Ghost Rider and anybody else within range 3. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Maybe a size restriction on the push towards, maybe not. I don't know.
He's got his bike. Feels like 3.
Yeah, 3
is
or
good.
I could see 4. I just don't see like pushing Dormammu being a thing that makes a whole lot of sense.
No, very, very few people should be able to. Okay, then, Quinn. On to one of my favourite characters, but favourite character from the comic book, shall we say? But most definitely not one of the best characters in the game, Mr. Winter Soldier, aka Bucky Barnes. First of all, he's a 3 threat with a 3/3/2, so he's below the curve on defenses, and then he is a 5/6 for his stamina, so slightly above on his flip side. But he just needs something to make him a bit more viable, doesn't he?
There are a few things he needs. First of all, his gun should be 5 dice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
his builders should be 5 dice.
Of seeing 4 dice builders on 3 threat characters, unless they're rapid fire, just stop.
I also hate seeing 4 dice builders with the words after this stack is resolved, the character gains power equal to the damage dealt. Because guess what? You're probably not going to do any damage. So I hate that because it's his only way of building power, and it just feels bad. And I think by upping that from 4 to 5 actually fixes quite a few of his other things as well, because all of a sudden got your back becomes so much better.
Yeah. Also, I think Bucky suffers a little bit from being an early release in the game. And I think AMG may have put a bit too much emphasis on Rogue Agent being powerful. The game is a lot larger now, 2 years after launch, than it was when Bucky released. And I think Rogue Agent has definitely gone down in value by leaps and bounds, really. Like, when he released, like, you had, maybe 6 Avengers, like 5 Cabal, 4
he was...
Guardians,
He appeared in a lot of dual affiliation lists because he was easy, right? He was much easier. For me, I think you could do one thing with Rogue Agent that makes it from going pretty much useless to being very good. And that is they not only count towards your 51%, but they are able to utilize any tactics cards that have that keyword on there as well. So all of a sudden, Winter Soldier can benefit from Avengers Assemble. Winter Soldier can benefit from Wakanda Forever. And I feel like
a little dangerous, I'll be honest.
Potentially.
I mean, Siege of Darkness turn, just shoot everyone in the face. Seems a bit good. I like the idea, but I think there are certain factions that it just doesn't quite work with. It might be a bit too powerful. I would like Rogue Agent to be slightly better, but I don't know if you can really do it in that way. I think maybe just making Bucky in general better.
A better character, making him a better character.
Therefore, make Rogue Agent more attractive. Assault Rifle to 5. Spetsnaz training is the stupidest power I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, really don't like it. Really don't like it.
I think it's been said by AMG that was put there as sort of a flavor thing more than an actual rule that you would use. Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't mind Bucky just having a reroll straight up.
Just getting rid of Spetsnaz and giving him a 1 reroll.
Well, yeah, just don't get rid of it. Just have it be the same name.
Yeah, same name, but change it to. I also want it to be attack and defense as well, because I feel like he needs some defensive tech.
His defenses suffer a bit as they are now. Obviously, he has till the end of the line with Cap. We'll probably see a bit more play now that you've got 10 slots and, Cap isn't awful anymore. It's still kind of iffy how often you actually get to see that, but I do sort of like the idea of him having a reroll. Maybe have it so it only works, so the offensive part of it only works during his turn, simply because it would bring down the power level of Got Your Back a little bit, because it's already at 5 dice. I think 5 dice with a reroll reactionary seems a bit good, but if it was just 5 dice, I think that's fine. And then when he's actively sort of on the prowl doing his thing, hunting down people, he should get the reroll when he does that. Obviously, keep the defensive thing to all the time, because otherwise... I was
just going to say, the defensive thing needs to be all the time. Yeah, because Got Your Back does feel like it becomes very powerful then. And it maybe needs to go from 2 to 3. And having him with a 3 dice reactive like that, a 3 power reactive like that, it feels like he's not always going to have enough. I don't mind Red Fury. I quite like it. I think it's thematic. You get to push them away and then shoot them.
I imagine it is him running up, drop kicking them, and then as they fall backwards and he's falling to the ground, just putting a clip into them.
Yeah. So quick rundown then. Winter Soldier. So what we're saying is assault rifle. The only change there is from 4 to 5. Red Fury, we keep it as it is. Got Your Back, we keep it as it is. Rogue Agent, I feel like it's too much for us to talk about Rogue Agent, and it only affects 2 characters. But then Spetsnaz training gets broken down into 2. When it's his activation, he gets to reroll 1 die when attacking. And then when it's out of his activation, he always gets to reroll 1 defense dice, are we saying?
Yeah, 1 defense dice reroll. I think that makes the 3-3-2 stat line a little better. It's still not great. But on that end till the end of the line turn, I think that could be a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, I do like that. Cool, Quinn. Moving on to one of your selections next then, and definitely a character I feel like at 4 threat needs a bit of a boost somewhere, but it's the man without fear himself, Mr. Matt Murdock. So
The
Quinn,
devil of Hell's Kitchen.
the devil of Hell's Kitchen, the web warrior that is Mr. Matt Murdock. So Quinn, 3s across the board, and then 5/6 on his stamina. He's a solid 3 threat, right? Oh, but wait, he's 4 threat.
Yeah. I mean, he does have defensive tech. He's got the ability to count blanks from any range on physical and energy, which is nice. Yeah, 5/6 hull split, I'm not the biggest fan of for a 4 threat. I feel like 4 threats should be minimum 6/6 unless they're super tanky, which with 3 dice, even counting blanks, Matt isn't.
He is not, no.
Yeah, like, I mean, you can kind of draw comparisons to Okoye defensively, but Okoye has... Obviously, she has a range restriction on her counting blanks, but she has the Dora Milaje reroll, which is pretty good.
And she's half the cost as well. Let's not forget that.
Would you rather have 1 Daredevil or 2 Okoyes? I'm taking 2 Okoyes every day.
I'm taking 2 Okoyes. So what are we saying then, Quinn? What do we need to do to make him better? We already spoke about area attacks.
Yeah, I would like to see it go down by 1. So I think generally, like, the ones that cost 6 should go down by 2. The ones that cost 4 should go down by... the ones that cost 5 should go down by 1. And just sort of bring them all in line to maybe, like, sort of 4 cost. Certain ones won't change. Like, I don't think Carnage's area attack should...
No, it's very good.
It's very good, and he has a way to increase the dice for every single one of the attacks. Things that don't have an effect like that, I think, are more reasonable. Yeah, some Matty boy. Good old Matt. You know, he's good, he's mobile. Like, you know, wall crawl with a long move. That's about as mobile as you can get. His strike is cool because it does stun on a wild. Like, he was part of a wave with Kingpin where we sort of started seeing that happen. And that
we saw a lot of stuns, didn't we?
Yeah. Like, Bat on Hook is cool. I wouldn't mind Bat on Hook being like a sort of a pseudo builder, like just sort of gain 1 power for doing it kind of thing.
Yeah, and we've said it already. I really like that on a character, the choice of builders. But yeah,
the options. I think maybe you could keep Devil's Deliverance the same cost and maybe even increase its range by 1. That seems like it might be a bit much because you could probably catch most of a team in that on an E shape.
Oh God, can you imagine it on Gamma?
Yeah. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah, like, you know, the famous Daredevil like hallway scene like is what Devil's Deliverance is supposed to be, right? He just walks down a hallway and he fucking murders people. Yeah, like, Man Without Fear is like a cool thing of like being able to punch someone back when they hit you. There's a little something that he's missing, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. Probably an extra stamina. I think that would go a long way to making him tankier, which feels like what they were going for with Daredevil is tankiness. You know, he's the Man Without Fear. He just sort of keeps getting up and going even when he's beaten down.
Very Steve Rogers-esque, isn't he, in that way? Like, that's how he's portrayed in the comics and things, he just keeps getting back up.
Yeah, he's also, like, gameplay-wise, he's also kind of like Sabretooth in a sense that he's got that attack back ability. And I think I'd actually like to lean into that a little bit more and give him aggressive. Because that feels like a very Daredevil thing of just, like, getting back up.
Oh, yeah.
Straight back into someone's face and be like, no, we're not done.
What about combining? Because I think maybe putting in, you know, so adding a builder portion to Bat on Hook, and I think it has to be 1 power, doesn't it? It can't be.
Yeah,
it can't be anything else.
The pushability on that has to say size 2 because Daredevil is just a dude.
Oh, he's a guy with a couple of sticks and some rope attaching them, right? That's you know. He's got super sensors and stuff, but that's about it. But what about combining the aggressive with the Man Without Fear?
Yeah, and then making it so you pay power to do the aggressive. I like that a lot.
And then if you're within 2 at the end of your move or your advance, so it's got to be towards the character, and then if you're within 2, you can do the attack. I quite like that. Because it does mean that those range 3, even range 4 potentially attacks against him, he's going to have that reactive side of it. And we don't see too many reactive attacks in this game, do we? There's only a handful of characters that have got them.
Yeah, and I think like if you combine that with like an aggressive style thing, I think then his strike can say like sort of stay the same. Like it just makes it just feels so right for Daredevil having that sort of implacable advance up the board. Like every time he takes a hit, he just keeps on coming at you.
Yeah, and I think the 1 extra stamina on his healthy side will help with that as well, because it means that he's that much more likely to be able to get that off as well.
Yeah,
so.
and then like I think that makes the backside of his card make a lot more sense because he loses Man Without Fear and he gets Devil of Hell's Kitchen, so he can make another attack on his turn, which is really cool. And I think if you have that sort of aggressive baked in to the Man Without Fear, like having him sort of walk up constantly, get beaten down, eventually when he does go down, he comes back, but he's in the middle of your team.
Yeah, and then just do.
He gets to do like a devil's deliverance on you. Like that feels right.
No, I like it. I like it a lot. So strike, we're keeping it as it is. Bat and hook, we're adding in a 1 power builder, and then Man Without Fear, we put in the aggressive. And I like that. I think that ends up making him a very viable 4 threat, and we give him 1 extra stamina on his healthy side as well.
I think that gives him a very it gives him a niche that he was perhaps lacking in at current moment.
Yeah, no, I do like it. So on to the first of our Guardians of the Galaxy characters, Drax the Destroyer, aka Drax. 3/3/2. He's 6 stamina on his front, 6 stamina on his back, and threat 3. So he's an above curve from his defensive stats, isn't he?
I mean, when you look at I Can Take It, he really shoots up there.
Yeah, but what is it about his everything else that he's got then, Quinn, that just doesn't make the cut for him?
He's just very slow. Like he's like every single one of his attacks is range 2. His throw is range 2, and he's a medium mover with no sort of out of activation movement, no movement tricks whatsoever actually, and it just means that Drax can be very easily controlled by a canny player. Just being able to like push him away or throw him away or whatever you need to do to get him away from you means that he's probably spending each of his turns walking back in and taking a sort of subpar attack into someone.
Yeah, he very rarely gets to make 2 attacks, does he, in a game?
Yeah, and I think if you give him the ability to make 2 attacks, he suddenly becomes a hell of a lot better. It feels like it's more likely that he's going to be able to make use of the bleed clause on blades, where he gets to reroll 2 dice. Headbutt's like a cool little thing to give out stun. It's got a push on it. Titan Killer is also very cool.
I mean, he's got a throw on it, and that gets better with every damage is taken, doesn't it?
Yeah, that can be an 8 dice attack for 3 power if he's been beaten down sufficiently. So the thing that I would like to add to Drax, and I mean, looking at the card, there's not actually a lot of room to write new things onto it. Thankfully, that's going to change with the new card formatting. But I would like to see him probably just get charge. I think giving him charge makes sense. He is the Destroyer. He likes running in and murdering things. It would just make his sort of range 2 kit it would make it feel a lot less sad.
Yeah, I think it's his lack of movement, I think, that really does hinder him. I'm not sure if giving him charge is going to put him too high up.
No,
because obviously
it would just be a nice little boost, wouldn't it? We don't want to make him like the best 3 threat in the game or anything. We just want to make it would give him a niche of being like really tanky, and then also being able to get in there and do a bit of work, like for a 3 threat, like a reasonable amount of work.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want the majority of your characters in a game to sit in that center of that bell curve, don't you? That's of that curve. That's what you want.
That's what you want.
And would you make that a 2 or a 3 cost charge? Because typically it's 2.
I'd probably have it as a 2 unless there's some sort of like thematic way to make it cost 3 and have it have like an extra effect, like
have it do something else.
Yeah, I'm not like super sure what you could do. Like I was thinking maybe a throw on the end of it. That could be cool. like Drax does sort of throw himself into people quite a lot. So like maybe have it just still be a 2-cost charge, but with like the slight boost of if this charge would bring him into base contact with the person he's attacking, they take like a collision from him. Sort of like a pounce the
Ooh.
charge rolled into one.
That has to then cost 3, right? Surely.
Probably, I mean, it is still Drax. Like,
Yeah.
it'd probably put him more up there than a normal charge would. But also, I don't think he necessarily has the power economy to support a 3-cost charge.
No, I do think adding a charge in there is going to help him a lot. It just helps him
maybe
get
have
back
it be
in.
like a charge that gives you like an extra die or just something like that. Like, I like the idea of if he actually hits into someone, like bases physically touched, getting just a little bit of a bonus.
So what we're saying then is we're going to give him a charge. It's going to cost 2. He's going to get to use his full medium, but we want a little trigger on the end that, I mean, I don't mind it being +1 dice, right? I'm kind of okay with that.
Something simple like that. Just it just feels like, charge is a very generic ability. Having it just have that little extra caveat would just be like, oh yeah, that feels a little bit more Drax. Because also, how often do you charge someone and actually have sort of the movement to get into base contact with them as well? It's not going to come up very often, especially if your opponent is trying to control Drax, sort of send him on his merry way.
I'd quite like it to not be called charge because it can't be, can it? If it's something other than, I want it to be like, you kill my family or something like that, like something that's thematic to him. So no, I like that one.
Like have it like that, like driven by vengeance makes a lot of sense. With the token being put out, but that would be like a cool name for that. The Destroyer also very cool name for that. Titan Killer, very cool name for that. Like they've got the names down pat. I'm struggling to think of anything extra they could give Drax, like in terms of naming. Also, like if you want to be like super memey about it, Drax should definitely have stealth.
Potentially, yes.
If he doesn't, if he doesn't make a move action, he gets like a little counter where he just stood very still, and he gets stealth.
I'm not sure on a character that only has range 2 attacks.
Yeah, I don't
going
think
to
like
be standing still very
have
often.
That ability, but I think it's a fun idea.
No, it would be. So I quite like the idea, Quinn, bringing it back round, 2 cost, charge plus whatever you want to call it, add 1 attack dice. It feels thematic, right? He's angry, he runs in, and he gets some extra dice. Or 1 extra dice
like
for that.
He sort of like jumped on someone's chest and he's just sort of slamming the blades down into them. Is sort of the idea. Is like the image I've got in my head.
Excellent. Well, there we go. On to the next one, and one of the most disappointing characters for me in the entire game, because I am a 90s child. This guy featured heavily in my childhood growing up, watching the cartoons, and it is Mr. James Logan Howlett, aka Wolverine, who
God, you're old.
is most definitely not the best at what he does.
No.
So 4 threat, 7 stamina on his front, which is good. 4, 3, 2 on his defenses, which feel right. Like, he should be susceptible to Mystic, a little bit more susceptible to energy, and, tanky as hell against physical attacks. But it's the rest of his kit, really, isn't it? That just, it's very lackluster.
Yeah, I mean, like, looking from this card and then Drax's, this card looks pretty barren by comparison.
So first of all, I don't mind his builder. 5 dice, range 2, damage equal to the power dealt, gives out a bleed, but also Pierce. I think the Pierce makes that a pretty good builder.
The big selling factor there, right?
Yeah, I think it's really good. I wouldn't mind seeing it being an auto bleed rather than a bleed on the wild.
Yeah,
it feels bad having to rely on bleed on a wild for both.
A lot. Like I feel like also like maybe that's the thing that Wind Soldier could get as well. Like it auto bleed would be cool.
It would be cool.
I mean, I say all of this with the caveat that I am a Blade player.
I know you love Midnight
Suns. People
Suns.
give out auto bleed is absolutely wonderful.
But it feels right. I mean, you're being slashed at by adamantium, right?
It's difficult to not start bleeding.
You're going to bleed, right? you are going to bleed. It's not by, you can get punched by cat and you might not bleed, right? You could block it, you could parry it, you can do all these things, but whether you manage to block the attack with your arm or not, you're going to bleed, right?
Yeah, he's still going to rake those claws down you, and you are going
Yeah.
to start bleeding.
Yeah.
It just makes so much sense.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I would put on there is that auto bleed. And then I don't mind the pierce being on wild. I don't think people should get auto pierce. I feel like you need to earn that.
Auto pierce is a dangerous road to.
You need to earn it. I want to look at his big action, his big spender, the best at what I do.
I mean, in a sense, what he does isn't very nice, but it's not very nice for the person playing Logan.
Yeah, so this character immediately makes a move action followed by an adamantium slash. So it's a charge, right? We've already spoke about this, but it costs that extra power. And when you do that, every wild counts as 2. I'd rather see this be a straight up more dice or something else that's because you could roll no wilds and he's got no dice modification.
Generally, my idea with this one is if Logan is supposed to be the best at what he does, right, and what he does is charge, then why does he charge for more than everyone else does? Surely, like, by comparison, he should be the best at what he does while still having it cost the same amount as everyone else does.
I think it's because he's got that extra little trigger on the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it?
But I think if you just made that 2 cost, you'd be far more likely to get it off during the course of the game. And it wouldn't feel as bad if you don't get the wilds, because, it's just a normal charge at that point, and you're still okay with that being what Logan's doing with his life.
I also think that it's quite restrictive as well. Most of the people with a charge can pay the 2 power for a charge and then pay their 2 or 3 or 4 power for their big spender as the back end attack of it, right? It doesn't have to be just a 0 cost. Whereas you're locked in here to the 0 cost.
I think with that in mind, if you keep it locked to, the 0 cost attack, but then make it 2, then you're sacrificing some flexibility, but, you're getting a big benefit out of, like, the double wilds potentially. And that feels right because it's the best at what I do, right? Which means that he's very focused on the one thing he does, right? Which sort of makes sense with it being limited to just the 0 cost attack, but then having him actually be the best by having that extra wild explosion sort of thing going on would be really cool.
See, I'd like to take it the other way. I'd like to keep its cost as it is, and then add in a form of dice modification in there as well, so you can actually fish for those wilds to make them wilds more prevalent.
Reroll all kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, I think you go one of 2 ways. I don't think you could have reroll any number of dice. I think that's going to be too much. But either or maybe reroll 2 or reroll all. So you can choose whether you want to just reroll all 5 dice, or you might get 6 or 7 if you get a couple of crits. But something in there that gives you the chance to take a risk, because you might have rolled, you might on 5 dice, right? Let's say you've rolled, 2 successes, one of which is a crit, and then rolled a 3rd success. So you've got 6 dice, 3 successes, but no wilds.
Yeah.
Actually, re-rolling all 6 of those dice is a gamble, but you only need 1 wild and 1 hit and something else, and be better off.
I mean, if your opponent has gotten a single success defensively, a single wild there is effectively doing the same work as those 3 results. Which,
it is.
Yeah.
So I do like the idea that he gets to re-roll all if he wants, akin to Doctor Strange's, but without the failure. I don't think he should be able to re-roll his failures.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to stick to my guns with it being cheaper, but I do see where you're coming from with sort of you're going the other direction with it, and I think either direction is better than where it currently is.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. It either needs reducing in cost, or he needs to get a little bit more for it. And for me, it's going with the rerolls allows you then to fish for those wilds, which makes it potentially significantly better.
Yeah, one other thing I would like to see added to Wolverine is, so you know, like whenever Mystique breaks into the X Mansion and is like going around and she's like a shapeshifter, and Logan can always tell
He
who it is.
knows who's
It doesn't
he's
smell
got the
right.
senses, hasn't he?
Yeah,
The
I think
smell.
something to do with those. Maybe like you know how Venom has symbiote instinct, which means that people can't modify against him, right?
Oh yeah.
I would like probably just that exact same ability on Wolverine, where like, you know, like something to do with the fact that he's got those better senses, and like he could sort of just get around those little sort of defensive maneuvers some people might try and do.
So would you have that as a defensive tech where people can't modify dice against him, or an offensive tech where the defender can't modify dice against him?
You could just make it both. Like, I
Ooh,
think
both feels nobody has
both feels
both.
very strong, but equally Logan needs all the help he can get.
I think if we're doing that, 7 stamina on his front feels
I think
one too much.
probably, I mean, he does have a major downside when he flips. Like, you know, he does sort of become more bestial. He can't take part in the objective game as well. Yeah, like, I don't know, something like that. I wouldn't mind it being a defensive thing. Like, it does then make him feel very, very tanky, which maybe isn't the best move with him having healing factor as well. I'd probably just have it stick to being like sort of a symbiote tendril style offensive thing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It feels like a defensive tech, though, doesn't it? Like he
It
can
does,
he
but
can
I think
sniff you out before you attack him because he knows you're there.
it does feel like that, but then it's just like sort of is that going too far in one direction?
What about having it as having it as defensive tech, but
Okay.
it being within a range? So, because the idea isn't that if you get to within you've got to be within a vicinity of him, right?
Yeah, like if
So,
you get within like 2 or 3 of him, then suddenly you can't like modify dice against him.
yeah, if you're within range 2 of Wolverine, you can't modify dice. And
I
that
think
feels
then
like quite thematic as well.
I think then if you've got it as that, I think you can have it be offensive and defensive at that point, because it's not sort of a global, all-encompassing thing. Like, it's a nice little boost if someone's within 2 of him and they're
Yeah.
attacking him, and then also it means that, you know, he's like the Berserker Barrage has more of a detriment to it if you're not within 3.
Yeah.
2
Okay.
rather. But yeah,
So
I like the idea of that.
So let's run down these then. We're keeping everything the same on the top line of his card. Adamantium Slash, we are making the bleed an auto bleed.
Yep.
Keeping the pierce the same. Berserker Barrage, we keep it as it is. The best at what I do, I'm going to throw it in there, Quinn, and I'm going to say we keep it at 3 and we give him the option to re-roll all dice, not including failures. Because I think
it's either that or cheaper.
yeah, and I prefer that one, so we're going with that one. Adamantium skeleton stays the same. Healing factor makes sense. Immunity to stun makes sense, and then we add in Logan sensors, or I can smell you, bub. Or he needs something with the word bub, right? He needs an ability with the word bub, right? And we have, if you attack him within range 2, or if a character is within range 2 of Logan, if he's attacking him, he can't modify. They can't modify.
If it's attacking or defending against Wolverine, it cannot modify its attack or defense.
There we go. That's the wording I was looking for.
Like, you don't smell right.
Bub.
Yeah. Sure.
We've got to have bub. We've got to have bub at the end of it. So, yeah. Okay. On to, I think, the second leader on our list, and a newer release, but I think a character that everyone was excited for. One of the most beautiful miniatures in the game, but unfortunately, especially with the current wave of characters and particularly leadership abilities, they went real basic on his, which is Cable and reroll 1 die per turn for attacks, which is not a great leadership ability, but also for a 5-threat character, his builder is pretty poor. I don't mind the rest of his tech. I think it's okay. But for me, they're the two big areas that he needs sorting out, is that plasma rifle attack and the wet works.
Yeah, like, so, I mean, I feel like the plasma rifle was designed with wet works in mind, right? You know, with a reroll involved. And so the way I'd probably make plasma rifle work a bit better is just by giving him an innate reroll on attack. I feel like that would make a lot of you'd have it be like, you know, future soldier or something like that. That's a stupid name, but we're going with it. You know, soldier of the future or something like that, and then have that as like an innate thing. Like whenever this model is attacking, it may reroll one attack die.
See, from a thematic sense, and I don't know if this has ever been done with a builder, and jump in, Quinn, if you know it has, but Cable's plasma rifle, right? His rifle that he has from the future, it has a dial on it. He can dial that up to do more or less damage based on what he wants.
In the vein of Thanos's,
I want him to have Thanos's spend 1 to 3 power, add this many dice to the attack.
I think that would be very cool.
I think it's thematic. I think it's unique, because I can't think of another builder where you've got the option to spend power.
There's no builders that do it. There is Thanos' thing, but that's the only one in the game that I can think of.
But it feels then like, because he's already gaining that extra power, right?
Yeah.
In the power phase. So he's already starting with 2 power. And it just feels like then he's going to be able to... Because, let's be honest, Rocket does what this guy does better, right?
3 less.
And he's
you have Rocket and
less.
Zemo. Rocket and Zemo, you now have Cable with his leadership active on every
all of the time, every single time. Yeah, exactly. So I think having that on there would be really good. And then I don't mind the Incinerate being on a wild, because from potentially 8 dice, you've got a really good chance of rolling a wild.
I also sort of like that idea a lot, from the sense that you're putting an investment in terms of power to get dice. If you, on average, if you put 2 power in, you will get 1 power back from the dice you've added, plus whatever other power you get from the actual base dice of the attack, which means that it will probably refund itself quite nicely. And I do like that a lot. It feels a lot more Cable to me.
Are you then ready as well? Because
oh
I want to add a 4th line of text to his plasma rifle, because for me, watching the cartoon, reading the comic books, even watching the movie Deadpool 2, I want to add a 4th line in there, which is, so he can add between 1 and 3, so he can spend between 1 and 3 power, add that number of dice in. But if he spends the 3, he then has the option to spend another 1 or even 2. And if the target they are attacking is size 2 or 3 or less, I'm undecided on the size, you get to push the target away. So if you've maxed out your power, you can then push that target, as you can then, throw the target away into somebody else.
You know, now that you said it, clearly you were very prepared for Cable. I do really like that. Having sort of that adaptability baked into his plasma rifle feels very cool.
I really like it. Rather than giving him more, because he's already got what, including his leadership, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 superpowers, right? 5, and then his leadership. I like that, because for me, that was the big thing about Cable, is that his gun did all of these different things. And, you know, in this game, it's pretty meh. But I like that idea that he can be sat at the back. He's already generating that extra power. But you do 1 plasma rifle and you manage to generate 3 power off it. You can then follow it up with a really big attack that has the potential. I think it needs to be size capped, but has the potential to, you know, knock a character back. I think size 3 feels good because it is energy, it's not physical. But I really like that idea of putting it in there. Yes, Cable is a character I've thought a lot about. I love Cable. He's one of my favourite characters from the comic books. But yeah, that's my thought on how we can make. I think putting those 2 extra things on his plasma rifle would make him very good.
Yeah, because they did also hype up his plasma rifle, like when they did I think it was the panel to play. Yeah, like that would feel like a plasma rifle that was worthy of the hype at that point,
Yeah,
right?
and you know what? It feels like Cable as well.
It does.
It's very very thematic. Wet works. Roll 1 die once per turn.
Yeah.
Or re-roll 1 die in their attacks once per turn. Does that need looking at? Is that a good enough leadership ability? Especially as he's a 5 threat cost, right? I do feel like leadership abilities should scale on the threat of the character you're putting them on.
So I think if we make your proposed changes to the plasma rifle, I think Wetworks can stay exactly as it is.
Yeah.
Because yeah, like I think if you go a little bit too far with Cable, like you can run into some issues. I think Wetworks works fine for just sort of X Force in general. You know, we've had like Cookie do his articles about like X Force with Zemo and making a little castle and stuff, and that's like cute and all. But just sort of like a single reroll, like it feels fine. There are characters like Domino that are going to rapid fire the crap out of people,
Yeah.
and like Deadpool with his bang,
Bang,
as
bang,
well.
bang, 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 bang. Is
Yeah,
there about 19 bangs on that card, I think, somewhere? Yeah.
Deadpool bangs, right? Anyway, yeah, I think if you make that any different than it is, you will run into issues of just characters exploding left, right, and center when they probably shouldn't, which feels like it could be a bit of a negative player experience. I think Cable just having those changes to his plasma rifle just becomes so much more viable. Like, I think that's all you need, really.
Yeah, but it's a benefit with a cost, right? It's going to cost him more power, and because let's be honest, Cable has a lot of things that he can spend power on as well. So he does get that 1 extra per turn, but I feel like it would just it would mean that he could stand on the back lines and do some really good damage, which for
Yeah.
me, Cable falls into that support stroke attack category, and I think it makes him far more viable doing it.
Yeah, I think so. And then like you also balance that with the fact that he's got that really good throw, but if he's doing stuff from the back line, he's probably not in there able to get like angles for the throw or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it gives you like sort of some options. I'd like Ascani Sun to go down in power probably, just like as with all the other area attacks.
I
I'd
think
like
he
that
has to go. I think because it's got the heal and because it's mystic, I feel like 5.
Yeah, 5 was
is about
where I
right.
was thinking. It is really nice that it does stagger when he flips. That's like cool.
Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it?
You played a lot of Cable, Rich.
Do you think the stagger should have a 2 dice trigger? I mean, it is only a wild and a hit, so it's.
I think that's fine. It just means that like you need to be slightly luckier with it, and I don't like with all the changes that we're doing to the plasma rifle, you're probably not doing a Skadi Sun anyway, unless like you need to do it to massively heal up, or you've been like dragged into the middle of the game
Yeah,
by
you've been
by our new Ghost Rider who pulls
by
you.
Ghost Rider or by a Venom or by somebody else.
Yeah,
So.
I think like with those changes, we're probably set with Cable.
Yeah. So just to clarify, then, plasma rifle. We need to call it a better name, by the way. It needs a better name than that. But we're saying we keep it at a 5/5/0, but then a little bit like Thanos' energy attack, 1 to 3 power. And if you go to the max power, you can pay 4 rather than 3, and it will do a short throw at the end of it. I think is really nice. Cool. So on to the next character then, and I've got some pretty heavy thoughts on this guy, and I'll tell you why. But it's Ultron, Quinn, and I'm going to give you my reasonings why right now why I think he's the first of these characters that we've gone through that I think needs a threat level change. We've had some big bads that are in this game. We've got Thanos, who is a threat 6 character without gems. Ultron is a big threat, not only in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the comic books. He's a big threat character. You know, he's not quite Thanos or Doom or Dormammu, but he is, you know, he's more of a threat than a Red Skull, or more of a threat than a Baron Zemo, more of a threat than a Sabretooth. I feel like he should be a 5 threat character.
Okay, that is very interesting. I don't think it will happen, but I do like the idea.
I just think that thematically, he is a bigger threat than other 4 threat characters in the game, and therefore that should be, you know, that should be reflected in what he is and what he's got, which I think makes changing his card a bit harder because we get to ramp him up that little bit more. And I've got some ideas around that as well. But what are your thoughts on taking him from a 4 threat to a 5 threat?
So I think one of the main issues you'll run into with that is the fact that Ultron is a core set character, which, you know, having a 5 threat in the core set seems like it might be a bit of an information overload for a new player.
Yep.
You know, if you make him like an actual worthy 5 threat, I think you're going to run into issues. I'd probably prefer to keep him a 4 threat and just make him a good, decent 4 threat, kind of like an antithesis to sort of the core set Iron Man. But I am very intrigued to see where you go with 5 threat Ultron.
Well, I think then, for the purposes of this video, because I hadn't thought about that point of making him or him being a core set character.
I mean, there's a reason I'm here, right?
Yeah, no, there is a reason you're here, and I think with that in mind, he can't be a 5 threat because then there is no way of running 17 versus 17 from a demo game from the core box. And I'm a firm believer that should be possible. So let's redo his card based on him being a 4 threat, and then if we get time at the end, I'll maybe give you some ideas as to what I think a 5 threat should look like.
Yeah.
So first of all, I'm going to throw it out there. His strike is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I had an idea with this strike that might actually make do it more often. Is like currently his energy blast is by far the best like thing he's got in terms of a builder.
Yeah.
I would remove the 1 power gain from that strike and just make it 6 dice. Like if you get within range 2 of the big scary robot man, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, I like it being. I would remove the 1 power. I would up it to 6, or I would up it to 5 and have a throw.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. I mean, like, just as a little aside here, I brought up the Ultron Master of Metal Ultimate Encounter card just because I'm like, oh, we could probably steal some things from this that might be not terrible.
Let's have a look then, because his Ultimate Encounter card has some interesting things on there. Obviously, this could not be a 4-threat character. Because...
Yeah, I mean, like, look at his threat on the actual card. It's 30. we're not having a 30-threat Ultron, don't worry.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But there are maybe some things that you're right, we can take from here. So, first of all, though, I think his builder needs sorting out, right? And I think you're right. You make it damage. You make it power equal to the damage dealt rather than 1, and then you make it either 5 with a throw or 6. I actually quite like it being just 6, and then
like maybe 6 and it does like bleed or something like that. You could have it very akin to the one on the actual Ultimate Encounter card with like bleed and pierce.
Bleed and pierce seems very good.
It is very good, but then I think to balance that, maybe you give him some really good tech for like being sort of further away from people, like some sort of thing where if he like, I think a defensive power, like sort of in the vein of like a repulsor shield or like a repulsion field around him, where if you're attacking him from outside of range 2, then he gets like a boost to his defenses or something because like they're coming in from so far away, like sort of the AI part of his mind has enough time to like calculate where it's coming in and stuff, and like set up something to like stop it or make it less effective.
Yeah, maybe you could add into that all will be metal. So he's already got some defensive tech against mystics.
Yeah.
Maybe add something in there that, when defending against mystic attacks, count each wild as 2 successes. That's already really good. But and then if it's an energy or a physical attack outside of range 3, count blanks or reroll 1 or something along those lines that gives him a bit more defensive
like
tech.
That. Yeah.
So we're going to change his strike. Energy blast, do we keep it as it is? It feels quite good already.
I feel like it's all right as it is. Range 4/5 dice feels like it's okay. Just thinking about it, I think that strike should probably have the builder part of it removed, just so it's more of a choice that you either do like this big smack where you've got bleed and pierce potentially on a wild, but then you're not gaining power from it. Because I feel like it should be that's when Ultron is like really pissed off with someone being near him, and he just lashes out at them, and it doesn't like build in power or anything. It's just get out of my way.
Well, I think if that's the route we're going down, then if we remove the builder part of it, I think we can up it to 6 dice with throw potentially. Maybe even have it costing 1, because typically if they're not generating power, they cost a power, don't they?
Yeah, have it cost 1, and then like he becomes like a real actual like threat in the middle of the board. Another thing I would like Ultron to have is I'd like him to have some sort of invulnerability because he's made of fucking vibranium.
Yeah, he really should be. I mean, he's got the all will be metal, but that is just mystic.
Like he's set up to be like the sort of the counterpart to Corset Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
So he should have a damage reduction like that.
Maybe all will be metal. When defending against mystic attacks, count each result in the defense roll as 2, and then just have underneath, and then reduce all damage by 1 to a minimum of 1.
Yeah, something like that, and then maybe like ignore the repulsor field sort of thing, because then I don't think he needs it necessarily.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't need 3 pieces of defensive tech, does it?
Yeah.
And then analyze and annihilate. That feels okay. It can be really good.
Yeah, it's just sort of one of those quality of life things. Like you never think about it until it's actually useful, and then you're like, oh, cool, that's a thing that exists.
And then kinetic field generator. So size 3 within 3, throw it medium, cost 3, feels about right.
Yeah, I think having that limited to terrain and then potentially having a throw on that
on his strike would be good.
Yeah, I feel like that fit.
No, I agree. Bleed and poison makes perfect sense.
He is a beep boop robot.
He is. He really, really is. So yeah, I quite like that. He doesn't change on his injured side, so that's fine.
Yeah, and then I think like maybe probably keep Age of Ultron the same. Or like if he feels like he's too tanky at that point, potentially have it be so he comes back injured.
On his injured side, maybe, yeah, that's something you could look at. So just running it down then, Quinn. Defensive stats stay the same. Strike gets changed to a range 2 physical, 6 dice, 1 cost with a throw. And I think we have a trigger on that throw there. It feels like you need a wild to trigger that throw.
Yeah, I think so. I think that is reasonable at that point. You're paying power to do it. He's got to have made his way into the middle of the fight.
Yeah,
which
or somebody's made their way over to him.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're saying that all will be metal. We just put an extra line in the bottom that you reduce damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. And I feel like that makes him then a very viable 4-threat character.
He's a tanky beater, which makes him fit. Obviously, one part of his issues is that he's only Cabal affiliated and he doesn't really have a niche in there. But I think if he's like sort of a tanky beater, that 1 power on the strike would actually be really good in Cabal because you get the power back for it. It'd be sort of like and then I think he'd have like a place he'd have a niche that he fits into.
Yeah, and let's not forget, he's a medium-based medium move, right, which is pretty good as well. So he can get about the board quite a bit. So, yeah, I like that. So moving on to the next one, and it's the second of our Guardians. I think you're going to see a theme. There's going to be some Guardians in here. Gamora, a.k.a. Gamora. Now, let's just preface this with the fact that she is supposed to be the deadliest woman in the galaxy. She even has a
Yeah.
superpower.
I mean, currently, that accolade is held by Medusa by a long way.
By quite a stretch, yeah. So she's a 4 threat. So she's going to be, she should be a bit more of a powerhouse. But first of all, let me address one thing, which is her defensive stats. 5 stamina on both, and then 3s across the board is most definitely under the bell curve, isn't it?
That's his 3 threat stats right there, my friend.
Yeah, that's standard 3 threat stats. So do we think something needs doing on that side of it?
I think a great deal needs doing. For a start, I think she should be 6/6 stamina.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
she's a warrior, right? She shouldn't be she's an assassin in a sense, but also, she likes running into the middle of fights and just murdering people. She probably should have more stamina.
Yeah. Well, she's a warrior in armor as well. Let's not forget that piece, right?
Yeah, she is armored.
So I think 6/6, and I'd like to see 4/3/3 on there for her defensive
I think
stats.
4 physical defense makes a hell of a lot of sense. Like, just because physical defense isn't just how well you can take a punch, it's how good you are at navigating sort of a scrum. In my head,
It's in my mind. A portion of that is, yes, I can take a punch, but also it's my agility as well. That because it's not just about being able to take the punch, is it? It's part of this thematically is evading that punch and parrying and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think 4 physical makes sense. So her first or her builder then, Godslayer, 6 is pretty good.
I think honestly, Gamora's attacks are fine, especially in conjunction with Deadliest Woman in the Galaxy. They're really good if she can get into someone, and that is the big issue she tends to have, is getting into someone.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think after making those 2 changes, the extra stamina on each side and then 4 physical defense, probably fine at that point. She's going to go down quicker than most, but she's still going to actually get there and do something, which is the important part.
Yeah, because she does have that assassin leap as well, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Which is nice. I wouldn't mind seeing that cost 1 more and be a medium, but that may be taking it a bit too far. But again, giving us something that's a little bit more unique. So I wouldn't mind seeing that. So 3 for medium rather than 2 for short.
Yeah, I feel like I actually quite like that a lot. It feels like it makes sense for Gamora. I don't read a lot of comics simply because having pictures and words together makes my brain go weird. I just like words. Please just give me words. But the few comics I've read, I have been sort of Guardians based. I've read a couple of Guardians comics, and she does tend to just sort of leap from person to person and just sort of just rip them apart.
Yeah, exactly that.
That medium throw feels like it makes sense. Because it'd be she finishes off someone and then she just sort of turns around, jumps at someone else, and just sort of slashes at them. It makes a lot of sense. I think having it cost more power is reasonable, but also isn't going to hinder her massively because her builder is really good.
Well, especially with Deadliest Woman as well, right? So
yeah, that is the reason why it's really good. I mean, it's pretty good on its own, but with that extra tech, it's really good.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's really good. Okay, then on to not the last leader, actually. We've got a fair few more to get through, but another newer release, another 90s character. It's Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. So he's actually above the curve on his defensive stats. So 6 stamina on the front and on the back, and then 4/3/3, which is basically identical as to what we just said. Gamora should be there as well, isn't he? But for me, one of the most lackluster parts of his whole kit is the leadership ability is just not very good.
I mean, it's a little bit garbage, isn't it, Rich?
It really is. It really is. But what else on there, Quinn, are you looking at and feeling like needs changing?
Right. First of all, Optic Blast, right? Why can it only push size 2 characters? Seriously, why? He
So
pushes Sentinels around all the time in like the comics and the TV show.
yeah, and I
It's
just want to clarify something here. So the people that think that Scott Summers shoots lasers from his eyes, it's actually not true.
yeah, they're not
His
lasers.
eyes
They're
are a
not made of light.
portal to an alternative dimension, and it's
Yeah,
the energy from the alternative dimension
it's
that comes
specifically
shooting
called out as
out.
kinetic energy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he fires kinetic energy at people. So I mean, his attacks should be physical, technically.
Theoretically, yeah, but I don't mind them being. I don't mind them being
Yeah, and like,
energy.
I mean, energy is a better attack type, but actually, you're sort of running with that for a moment. If you make them sort of physical, then I think you can do something a little bit cooler with the optic blast, which is I wouldn't mind seeing it be like 6 dice. Like
Yeah,
Scott feels like Scott is a powerhouse, right? He like when he presses his little visor and comes out, like he does some damage.
well, he takes, like you say, he can decapitate a sentinel with his optic blast.
In fact, like he pushes them around very regularly. Like I still think keep the push in a wild, but just have its size unlimited. Like a sentinel is probably size 5. If he can push a sentinel back,
Well, then he can push Dormammu. Yeah,
let him push Dormammu. That makes sense. Like Dormammu is a force from another dimension, and Cyclops is literally shooting the power of another dimension at him. Right?
yeah. No, I like that. I don't know how keen I am on taking it from energy to physical. I would like it to remain energy, but I think removing that restriction from size 2, so just, yeah, I do like that. And it is before damage is dealt, isn't it, as well? So that's quite nice. But then I don't know if you can do 6 energy. That feels
Yeah,
very strong.
I don't want it to be 6 energy. I think it would be okay as 6 physical. Just because physical is it's by far the best defended against like attack type in the game. So it feels like that is a little bit more reasonable. Yeah, his leadership is atrocious. The way you fix his leadership is just have it also apply to superpowers.
I think you can go down one of 2 routes. Either either apply it to superpowers or remove the range 3 aspect of it.
Yeah, just have it any range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And either of those, I don't think you can have both. I think
No.
both becomes too powerful.
Personally, I would prefer the superpowers one just because it would also potentially make like Logan a bit better as well. Like I think if it was superpowers, you'd see him a lot more. He'd work with a lot more people simply because Fender attacks are like while some of them are really great, they don't build power back, so they have to be like this big thing that you do. And obviously reducing the cost of them is great and all, but a lot of the time you're just better served doing a builder to be able to do like superpowers. So then I think if it works on superpowers as well, you sort of mitigate that circumstance and you're actually more likely to do the spenders as well.
I would like to throw in a caveat there.
Okay.
I don't think this should apply to reactive superpowers.
Yeah, I think active superpowers.
I think it needs to be active only. But I think you keep the range 3 in there. You add in, or is performing an active superpower, then rest of text, comes into it. I like that. It makes what we've done with Wolverine so much better. Any of the throws from any of the characters, I really like that. So I think there's 2 changes: Optic Blast to physical, 6 dice, remove the size restriction, and then superpowers in the X-Men Blue War active superpowers makes him a very viable leader, first of all, because that's the other thing that we've got to address with these guys is if Scott was the only leader for X-Men, we may find ourselves in a Spider-Foe situation where people playing X-Men would just not take him. It's that bad. So I think that's the first thing you've got to address. And then I think the changes to his builder makes him a very good 4-threat character. Or not a very good 4-threat character, a viable 4-threat character, because what we're not looking to do
character is worthy of carrying a leadership. He'd be more of like a Steve type character where his leadership is really good and his own kit is like decent as well, but it's not like groundbreaking or anything.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want to try and do here, isn't it? We don't want to take bad characters and make them broke the other side of things, right? You've got to try and balance it all out. So anything else, I mean, I like everything else that he's got there, right? His hit and run feels very thematic. Quick draw is really nice. Field leader is pretty good as well. So
yeah, like I mean, I've played a fair bit of Scott because I actually quite like Scott as a character because I think he's a massive arsehole in comics. and people just ignore the fact that he's a massive arsehole. Like,
He
I
really
find
is.
that funny for some reason. But yeah, like I've run him in Avengers before, and like he's actually really quite nice just in there, being able to use superpowers for cheaper. Which,
Well, because he's got some really nice superpowers, right?
yeah, field lead is absolutely amazing. Like hit and
Field
run
lead is
is
really
really
good.
cool.
A one-cost hit and run feels very nice, right? Really, really good. So, okay, so just high level that for that then. Optic Blast, we change to physical. We give him one more dice and we remove the restriction on the size. And then X-Men Blue Affiliation Leadership, we keep the range, but we add in active superpowers in the mix as well. And I think that makes him a very good, solid, all-round character.
And I think just for consistency's sake, Optic Devastation probably becomes physical as well, because otherwise it makes very little sense that one's physical and one's
yes,
not.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I think you can still leave that as physical and maybe reduce the cost by 1.
I think if he's got like his... Oh, that's another thing, actually, with Scott. Concussive Force is the most ridiculous, like, world effect I've ever seen. It's so bad. That needs to actually do something.
What would we have it do? Because
like, just have it apply stun. At least it's slightly better than like, concussive than what it is. Like maybe have it like stun before damage is dealt, just for as like
I like that. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I like that. Like I think that's fine. It's not like super broken or anything, I don't think. It's just like a cool little thing that you can have.
Yeah, I like that. So stun before damage is dealt and then remove the lose 1 power because
it's stupid.
Because if you're doing damage, they're going to have gained power. It's going to be a net gain for your opponent anyway. So, yeah. So, Quinn, on to next. The worst 3-threat character in the game. Arguably, for his cost, the worst character in the game. He's got some competition with another character we'll come on to. But Benjamin Poindexter, also known as Bullseye. 3s across the board defense, 5 and 5. So far, a pretty standard 3-threat. But he just has nothing in his arsenal at all, does it, that makes him want to be playable?
I mean, about as much as he's got his arsenal is a pencil, and he's not very good, unfortunately. There are a great many things that should change about good old Benji Poindexter, who has probably one of the dumbest names in comics. It's up there with Blackie Garboltagon.
It is. It is.
For a start, why is throwing knife 4 dice? Like, I get the fact that, it's a knife, but then again, he's Bullseye. His whole thing is that he can turn any object into a lethal weapon.
Yeah, I don't mind the 4. What I do hate is power gained equal to the damage dealt. I think unless it's Mystic and or unless you've got a Pierce, I don't think that should be a thing. It's just so bad that I just don't think it should exist in the game. So yeah, that's like that. So I don't mind it being 4 if they change it to power just auto-generated, whether you do a damage or not.
For a start, right? He's supposed to be able to, hit anything. Right, from any distance, just sort of he's got like this ability to just sort of work out angles magically in his head to make sure he always hits. So I think for a start, all of his attacks should ignore line of sight. When they ignore line of sight, he can bounce something around a building and have it still hit someone. That's just Bullseye, right?
Okay, so ignore line of sight and they don't benefit from cover. Okay.
Yep. Like, make it like the shield throw. The shield throw ignores line of sight. There's no reason why him throwing anything shouldn't, because it's sort of the same principle. I never miss should be an innate power that just means that he always does at least 1 damage with his attack, I think.
Well, actually, I don't know. I don't mind if throwing knife generates 1 power. I then don't mind that so much. I don't know.
I mean, it's a slightly awkward one because...
I tell you what I would do. I would change throwing knife to be generator power. I would have I never miss to be 1 power, but I'd add the bleed onto it as well. Yep. So you do 1 power, and I don't know, in my head it's like a knife is going to make you bleed if you're getting hit with a knife. Like,
I mean, it's much the same as the Wolverine thing, right? If you're getting hit by a sharp object, you're probably going to be bleeding.
Yeah, if you're taking damage from it, then yes, absolutely. On his I never miss. Pincushion. So 4 cost, 5 dice, but he does have rapid fire, right? Let's not forget that. Does auto bleed. They don't benefit from cover. We are saying that they're going to give line of sight thing to both things that he's got there. So
yeah.
What can we do to pincushion then to make it better?
So this is one of the reasons I want I Never Miss to just be like an innate thing. One, it feels better thematically. Like, him never missing is just a straight up fact, right? It shouldn't be a thing that is like optional. And then it would really give this attack like some weight to it because you do this attack on someone, you're guaranteed 2 damage.
2 damage at least, yeah.
Like, I feel like that would probably make that attack viable. I think if you're making throwing knife generate 1 power guaranteed, I think you probably need to keep pincushion at the same cost simply because otherwise you run into issues. I would also like to see I Never Miss count as actual damage from the attack for the purposes of something like Master of Evil. Just because I think he should gain extra power from that. It gives him a reason to be in Cabal.
Okay, so just to recap that first couple of bits, then Quinn. So what we're saying is we generate the auto generate power on throwing knife. I like line of sight becomes irrelevant, and I Never Miss becomes a innate ability that doesn't cost any power. That is just a thing that not after the attack is resolved, but if no damage is dealt, do 1 damage. So that it triggers the Cabal thing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It makes him very consistent, and sometimes that is just what you want from a character. I think at that point you're pretty set with Bullseye.
Yeah, parting shot I quite like. It's like a guaranteed tricks and traps almost. Actually, for 2 power, especially because he gets to do the advance as well. Could maybe do with being a medium move rather than a short move, but again, I think if you tweak too many things, you then take him from being the bottom of the pile to the top of the pile, and that's not where he should be.
I think if you give him the niche of being a very consistent damage dealer that does minor amounts of damage to everyone, I think then he just makes a lot of sense.
Especially with the bleed, right? He's ticking over that damage, which actually against some of the big hitters, Dormammu not because obviously he's immune to bleed, but Thanos or actually even a Dormammu being able to do that consistent 1 damage actually makes him very, very viable.
But, if he starts his turn with 8 power, or he's in Cabal and he's got 6, he can just sort of turn to someone and go 4 damage.
Yeah,
and I think that's okay for the power cost it requires. You're taking a 3-threat character that's kind of got med defenses and stamina, and then if he gets to that 8 power, he just sort of has that turn where he basically turns someone into a pincushion. I like the idea of him having sort of a random household object between each finger and just sort of loosing that hand at someone and having them all stick in, and then they take 4 damage and 8 power off of a 3-threat character, do 4 damage guaranteed. Seems okay.
Yeah, I like that. So then on to one of the, I think it was one of the first characters we both said when we came up with the idea for this list. Another leader, he's been mentioned once already, but that is Green Goblin. So 4 threat, 7 stamina on his healthy, 5 stamina on his unhealthy side or his injured side. One of the few characters that changes his defensive stats. So 4-3-3 on his front, 3-3-5 on his back. I mean, people try and get this guy injured and flipped as quickly as possible, right, when they're playing games, because he's so bad on his front.
I mean, some do. I don't particularly. I like having him as just sort of a dude that sits on an objective, but I mean, I'd like him to be better, so
So let's start then, as we have done with everybody else that we've gone through. His builder, it's 4 strength, and it's power equal to the damage dealt. You already know my feelings on that, Quinn. Something in there needs to change, doesn't it? It either needs to be a guaranteed 1 power, or I think because he's a 4 threat, it needs to be 5 dice.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 ways you can go about it. You make it 5 dice, and then you're sort of there. Or you make it 4 dice, guaranteed power, and guaranteed condition.
Yeah, either or. Yeah, I don't mind either of those. I do feel like he's got a lot of things that he can spend power on. So and only generating that one. Yeah, so I think I'd rather go with the generate more power option and give him 5 dice feels better.
Yeah.
Because Craven with Green Goblin then means that he's potentially doing 6 dice, which feels really good, right? Which I
Yeah,
don't
feels
mind
great.
from outside help. I'm okay with that, taking it from 4 to 5, and the fact that you can choose energy or physical as well. That's quite
Yeah.
nice on the builder. Knight of the Goblin. Once again, you can do energy or physical. 4 cost, 7 strength, and if it deals damage, they get poison and incinerate. For me, feels okay. I don't mind that as
Yeah.
a builder. As a spender.
Yeah, I think normally, whenever I look at that ability, I think, oh, that costs one too many. But I think that's massively like tinted by the fact that he has an awful builder.
Yeah.
I think if he has normal builder and he like actually generates power properly, like yeah, I think he's fine at that point.
One area I do want to talk about, Quinn, is his Oscorp weaponry. So
Yeah,
once per turn, while an allied character is attacking, it can spend 1 power when modifying opposing defense dice. So that's key. So it is once you've seen all the dice. If it does, it may re-roll 1 opposing defense dice. It's just not very good in a nutshell.
no, it's not.
I like the idea behind it. I like the idea that you are manipulating your opponent's defense dice. That's unique, right? And I think every leadership, if every leadership was a different flavor of the same thing, it would be boring. For me, I want to see that power removed.
Yeah, I think just making it a guaranteed thing that you get to do every time you attack, like once per turn, every time you attack someone, just get rid of one of their re-roll one of their successes on defense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. It doesn't thematically, right? It's that Norman is like set up the foes. He's given them like all these gadgets.
All
and
the
stuff.
tech, isn't it? Yeah, they've got all this tech.
Surely he's already given them these things, so why are they paying power to use them, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
And I do think when it's something like that, if we compare his 2 cables, for example, which are the same thing pretty much, but just on either your attacking or defending dice. Now, there is a percentage difference in terms of the outcomes and things.
Yeah, you're more likely to do more damage with Oscorp weaponry. However, you're more likely to hit your own triggers with Wetworks.
With Wetworks, absolutely. So I think because it's that once per turn, then get rid of the power cost, and that makes it absolutely fine. Absolutely viable. No issue with that one whatsoever.
Yeah, perfectly fine. I'm happy with that.
Hit and run feels thematic for Green Goblin.
Yep,
I quite like that.
Can't remember if he was the first character that actually had hit and run.
I think he may have been. Yeah, I think he may have been. Trick or treat. Once again, I'm all right with that. Arch Nemesis Peter Parker makes sense. It's one of the most thematic things in the game. I want to see more of these Arch Nemesis tags on characters where appropriate. You don't want them, splattered across everywhere. But I really like it. I think it adds some real nice thematics in the game. And then obviously flight. So I think by making those 2 changes on this side of his card, because he's one of the few characters I think that we're going to need to look at front and back, aren't we?
Yeah.
But I think those 2 changes, Quinn, to his bombs and his leadership are okay for this side.
Yeah, I think so. And also, with the change to his bombs and leadership, he actually becomes quite reliable at doing damage as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like a 5 dice builder, but it's actually better than a 5 dice builder for one of the 2 attacks you hope to make in a turn.
So then onto his flip side. So he drops from 7 to 5, which I'm okay with because, the idea is that he goes a little bit crazy, doesn't he? When he gets injured.
Yeah, he starts to lose it.
So Pumpkin Bombs already is at 5. So are we saying then that we think it needs to go up to 6, or do we leave it at 5?
I would leave it at 5, especially with the change to Oscorp weaponry. I think if you start making that a 6 dice attack, you get into worrisome waters, shall we say.
No. So we've then got Glider Ram, which again I quite like. It's a 3 cost medium throw of himself, but doesn't take damage. We've still got the Arch Nemesis, and then we've got the one thing that I think everyone or most people forget to do when they're playing Goblin, is the Unstable Psyche, where he gains extra power for each crit, wild, and hit rolled, and he rolls 5 dice, and then gains a power for each of them. Is there anything else you'd add into this side of the card, Quinn? Either taking something from the front and putting it in the back, or just new things that we'd add in there?
So the only issue I have with the flipped version of Goblin is how squishy he is. He's very easy to take down. 5 health with 3/3/5 makes him quite a vulnerable target, and because he's your leader, I think that's not a great thing to have. I would probably just make him a blanket 4/4/4 when he flips, because it's sort of like the goblin serum is sort of like coursing through his veins a little bit more when he's flipped, and sort of having that come out in the sense of he gets tougher, but he's a little bit more fragile in the health sense, just because you don't want to have a game where your leader gets flipped turn 2 and then suddenly they're gone by turn 3. That's always a terrible feeling to have. Just having him be that little bit more survivable, I think, would do wonders for him, especially when you actually care about having your leadership now.
Absolutely, yeah, because it's a far more viable leadership. So yeah, I don't mind that. 4s across the board, feels good. But yeah, I think those changes. Then he becomes a more than viable character, and once again, a more than viable leader. Because right now, Green Goblin does not get played in Spider Foes anywhere near as often as he should do. Right, your leader of your affiliation should be your first character of choice.
Yeah, he should be the centerpiece to what you're doing, and Goblin just currently isn't, which is really quite sad.
It is sad. It really is sad. Yeah.
Model is fucking gorgeous.
Oh, it's a really good model. Really good model. Yeah. On to then the last of our leaders, and a third, I believe, of our guardians. Now, everyone knows the problems with this guy, but let's break it down. His leadership is terrible. Cool, move on.
That's one word for it.
So, for anyone that doesn't understand Star-Lord's leadership, he has this leadership where you can discard one of your 5 tactics cards, and any character gains 3 what are called winging it tokens. Now, what does a winging it token do? Well, it allows you to reroll up to 2 of your defense, attack, or dodge dice. Now, you spend these tokens at the same time that you spend the old school MODOK and Shuri and Black Panther power. So I think that's the first thing that changes, Quinn, isn't it? Is that you spend them when you want them.
I mean, that's the first thing that changes if we assume that we're keeping the leadership anywhere near
as it is, yeah. And then so not only have you had to spend a tactics card, you've got to then spend the dice before you have seen all of the dice being rolled or crits exploded, and then any character that's got tokens loses them during the next cleanup phase. So if you spend it and then don't have the opportunity to use it, you lose them that round. It's just overall really bad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're spending a really valuable resource to get something that is far less valuable and isn't permanent. There are plenty of issues with that leadership. And I think there are numerous ways that you can fix it. One of them is just, you just ignore the tactic card thing, completely remove it. Start the turn, give out 3 winning it tokens, easy. I think then at that point, it lets you be pretty adaptable, and it's an all right leadership. I would also like the option to split them up between characters, and not just have them all on one character, because you can get into situations where all your hopes are riding on one character and then they get splattered very quickly.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
So, I mean, also, something very important to mention with Star-Lord here is that he is a gem bearer, and he can bear the power gem.
He is a gem bearer, yeah.
And with the changes we know were coming to, gem bearers, where basically you put the gem on them, and then they don't take up an extra slot, but they have to take the gem every time, I think that would make Star-Lord completely unplayable with the power gem.
Oh, 100%, because he goes from being I actually don't mind his two attacks. I think they're pretty solid. You know, energy 5, range 4, power equal to the damage dealt for his spender.
Yeah.
Full auto, he's one of the few characters in the game that can dish out multiple conditions, and they are bleed, shock, slow, and stun. So not the best, but not the they're bleed
Not the
and
worst.
shock.
Yep.
Actually, they're all pretty good. Most conditions are pretty good, but he can dish out multiple. Add in a winging it token so he can fish for those wilds as well. I think is okay. I'd like to see something on Star-Lord that's a little bit different, Quinn, and that is keep his card exactly as it is right now at 3 threats, but changing the winging it, right? And then I think we keep everything else the same, but I want to see a ability that is, if he is a gem bearer, so if he has the power gem, unlock this superpower. And I want that to be a version of drop off. So a combination of Captain Sam's ability that he's got, airlift, that's the one. So drop off esque, airlift, where he can take any other size 2 character. I think that needs to be the restriction, right? He can't do this to Dormammu, but he gets drop off, and he can drop another 2 threat character within range 1 of him, and they can do an attack.
So I do like that idea. However, that there are some caveats I would like to add to it.
There needs to be some caveats, because that could be
for the
amazing.
sake of balance. So, I mean, first of all, I think having that as like a 3-power superpower would be fine. I don't necessarily think he needs to be a gem bearer for it to apply, but these are the caveats I would make. So I would have it like airlift, where after he does a move action, when he does a move action, you pay your power to do the thing. I would have it be a range 2 place from where they currently started, not from where Star-Lord ends up, because that is a great deal of movement, and that is probably one of the main reasons drop-off was banned, not actually the free attack. I would then allow the free attack. Yeah, I think that's fine. That makes a lot of sense. It's thematic, It's Star-Lord giving someone a lift with his rocket boots. But it just makes certain characters less terrifying with it. Dropping a Medusa in up the middle of the board and having her slap people for free, which then can suddenly be 2 slaps. It becomes a very dangerous game you're playing. I would actually like to ignore the size restriction, but add in another restriction and have it be limited to Guardians characters, because then
I
it's
like
a lot
it.
more manageable. It's sort of in the vein of sort of the closest thing we currently have to drop off, which is special delivery, which is an A-Force character can drop She-Hulk off effectively, and sort of have it be the inverse of that, where it's limited to Guardians characters, because I feel like that makes sense. Quill probably isn't just going to give, Bob a lift. It's probably only going to do it for his mate. Then you can get around some size restrictions, because there might be, a size 3 Guardian that comes along at some point. I don't believe there are any currently.
No. Ronan? Is Ronan size 3?
Ronan is size 3, and I think that's, I think Star-Lord can probably give Ronan a lift. It's only a short, little jaunt.
So actually, in my head then, and because of the Power Stone in my head, that kind of removes the size restriction.
Yeah, because the Power Stone is giving him extra strength.
Yeah.
Which I get that as a as a reason for that. What I would do is I do like the idea of sort of unlocking a superpower with the power gem. But the superpower I would unlock is, if we keep winning it as it is, maybe make winning it tokens slightly better. Maybe make them a full reroll rather than a single reroll, a double reroll rather, and then have him have a 6 or 8 power superpower where he can basically just pick a tactic card from your discard pile, put it into your hand again, but have it so it can only be used for discarding for winging it tokens.
And it's called something like Dance Off Baby. I don't know.
Something like that, yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. His ability to to go into his to go into the discard pile and then bring them back.
And I think the main balancing factor of that ability is it can only be used for winning it tokens.
Oh yeah, you can't. Yeah,
you don't want to have someone like a player where they just go, okay, I'm gonna all you've got every turn. I'm just gonna keep bringing it back with Star-Lord because I hate you.
Question then.
Yes.
Do we? So we've added quite a bit there. It's probably one of the biggest overhauls of any character. I think top half of his card we're happy with, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were like a couple things. So, I mean, I think I'd like to see him have slightly better defenses just because with the gem, he is a 4 threat at that point. I feel like he needs 4 threat level stats in a sense. Like, I don't think they need to be as good as 4 threats, but I think
I think 3's across the board and 6 is okay.
I'd like him go to 6 when he flips.
Yeah, maybe 6, 3s and 6. Yeah.
Another thing that I think could be quite cool is changing up element gun and full auto a bit. So having full auto be just if this attack does damage, you apply all 4 of those conditions. Right?
Oh my dear Lord.
And then,
remember, he's only 3 threat.
I know, but then having element gun be sort of like Hawkeye's arrow shot, where on a wild it gives out a condition, just because then it leans him further into that sort of condition playstyle, which I think is quite like a cool little archetype that is slowly getting more and more support.
Yeah, I think doing damage and applying all 4. If you apply bleed, shock, slow, and stun from doing one, from doing 1 damage feels
before in that case. Then like just something to make that a little bit more consistent. Equally, if my proposed winning it change happens where it's reroll any number of dice rather than 2, then I don't think that change needs to happen at all. Just a potential consideration. Yeah, I think the top half of his card is fine. I think adding those 2 superpowers, one of which is unlocked with the power gem, I think that kind of works quite nicely.
So I would say that the of the 2, the one I would want to see unlocked with the power gem is the drop-off one. And I'll tell you why, because for me, you need that second superpower that you spoke about all the time to make winging it work.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And then probably have it be like a 6 cost power at that point, because I mean, effectively you're paying 6 power off of your leader every turn, so you can just use your leadership. It is a big investment. Even if he's got the power gem and he's generating loads of power, it's still a lot to spend.
Yeah, it really is. But I think there's some good things there. That would make Star-Lord, because you have to remember he is only 3 threat as well, so that's that is one of the things that we have to take into consideration, because I think you could very easily make him 4 threat, couldn't you? But I think one of the attractive things about him is that he is only 3 threat, leaves you a lot of flexibility for the rest of your roster.
Yeah, and then if you want him as a 4 threat, you've got the gem, right?
Yeah, exactly. Into the final stretch then, mate. So 3 cards left. 1 needs a buff. 2 of them we want to nerf a little bit. But starting then with Ebony Maw. We spoke about Ebony Maw a lot in a number of our tier list videos.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly positive, was it, Rich?
It really wasn't. So threat 5, 2/6 defenses, which we're okay with because he has the ability to spend 2 power to up those defenses to use his mystic defense, so that's okay. 7 stamina on his front is okay. 4 stamina on his back is not great. And one of his biggest problems is power generation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go to town on more right here. But first of all, 7 stamina on the backside, like he should have.
100%.
4 stamina is fucking silly. Right. Second of all, 6 dice builder that gains power properly.
Yep.
And also, I think you could probably keep Sinister Influence or just make it a guaranteed thing.
I don't mind. I don't mind the trigger. I think if you're up in the dice,
I think get rid of the trigger just because it's the entire thing that Ebony Maw does is he controls and influences people. So have it be 6 dice, power gain per damage dealt, and then have it be just have a built-in bow effectively, and then with some of the other changes that are coming along, it will give him a niche in the sense that he can control more than one character at a turn.
Yeah.
Right? Have that done. He doesn't get sap or anything like that, which seems to be the trend with, 5 dice, threat 5 mystic builders. Get rid
No,
of
he
sap.
doesn't need sap.
That.
Yeah.
He's got incredible psychic potential. He's already gaining more power a turn.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Those are the first two changes. Then, I think I'd like to add a little bit of a boost to his telekinetic powerhouse, his throw. His throw is probably one of the best in the game as is.
Absolutely.
But I'd like it to just have a little bit of a thematic thing where, I mean, you remember the scene in Infinity War, right? Where he sort of puts Strange into a brick wall.
He envelops Strange, doesn't he? Yeah.
Like, that's like the coolest thing Moore ever did, right? Like, having him do something like that where, if a character's hit by terrain he has thrown, have them get, like, an effect on them or something, right? Where, like, sort of they're a little bit weight. Maybe have it so they get slowed. I think
I was just about to say slow seems to make sense thematically for me.
Just like slapping slow on someone because they're sort of encased, like, partially in, like, some brickwork or something, I think would be really cool. And, like, it's very thematic. I don't think, like, it's a major effect, so I think you can sort of keep it, like, same power cost and everything like that.
Yeah.
Right, then we've got Herald of Doom. Herald of Doom is all right, but why the fuck is the throw size 2?
So this is the so I wanted to just understand this. So he is a telekinetic mystic user, and for him, he can pick up a size 4 building, but picking up a size 4 character is just too many.
I mean,
makes no
he
sense.
Has incredible psychic potential, but apparently can't pick up Kingpin.
Yeah, that needs to be 4 straight off.
It needs to be 4. I'm all right with it being on a wild trigger. The only thing is, I'm also kind of okay with its cost as well because he's generating power from his actual attack now. He's got incredible psychic potential, all that sort of stuff. I feel like that makes him okay. What I would like to see as well is, like, he's sort of like Magneto in a way, right? Because he's got the ability to use his mystic defense. He can use it to dodge as well. He's got a throw. He's sort of like a 5-threat Magneto, but he's mysticky, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is, like, a cool place for him to be in. What I would like to see is some sort of thing, maybe not quite attached to Mind Over Matter, but sort of alongside it where, how Magneto has magnetic refraction?
Yes, they cover.
And he pops that up constantly, all the time. I would like Ebony Maw to have something similar, but have it only apply to him. Sort of like, he's got, like, bits of rubble floating about in front of him, like he does. I've seen some cool conversions of, like, Ebony Maw where they've done, like, some brass wire twisted around him and, like, put some, like, rubble around it, like he's sort of making it sort of float around him.
Yeah.
I think just giving him a superpower where he always gets cover would be really cool. I think you can keep Mind Over Matter the same as it is, and then it just makes him a little bit more consistent in terms of defense.
Okay.
And, like, I think, like, once you do those things, I think he's fine. Like, it makes Mind Over Matter more of a choice because, I mean, 2 dice with guaranteed cover isn't actually that terrible. So there might be times where you choose to just sort of weather a punch, right?
Yeah.
And it just adds a little more complexity to him. So yeah, I think those are probably the changes I'd make to Ebony Maw.
So I want to just run these by again then, and I'll maybe pick some apart because I think maybe all of them put him in the very higher echelons of other 5-threat characters. So 7 and 7 front and back is
completely average for a 5-threat.
14.
Yeah, 14 is the average for a 5-threat.
Okay. Obviously the 226 that's resolved by by his ability. Black Tongue, I completely agree. I would personally keep the wild, but I get your reasons for not doing it. So we're saying...
actually, I have had a slight thought on Black Tongue. I don't actually mind that staying at 5 dice. if it's like guaranteed move on someone and it's power per damage,
I
right?
think that's okay at that
I'm
point.
I'm
Yeah.
a-okay with that being 5 dice because Moore isn't really there to beat the shit out of people. He's there to like sort of influence and beguile people, and I feel like that's quite representative of that. Like they'll take a bit of damage, he'll gain some power from it, but the main effect is him like moving someone along, sort of being the puppet master.
Yeah. So I think you could do something else with that one, which is after this attack is resolved, gain power equal to the damage dealt, or if this attack does not do damage, gain 1 power.
Have it like the Hulkbusters.
Have it like the
Hammer
Hulkbuster.
Yeah, just sort of a safety blanket behind it. I
So
like that as well.
you keep it as 5 because I think giving him a 6 Mystic builder is at range 4 becomes very strong. And he's got a lot of other things in there as well. Keep the Sinister Influence, but give you the fallback of getting a power there. And then Herald of Doom, I think remove the size 2, up it to size 4, keep everything else the same. And then Telekinetic Powerhouse, adding a slow at the end of it, I think is quite nice.
Yeah, it's a very minor effect, but it just feels just right.
Cool. I'm okay with that. I'm
and then
okay
obviously
with that.
there's the cover thing as well, which
And then
would
the
only
cover-
apply to him.
And then
not like a bubble thing like refraction. It's just he gets cover.
and I think you just make that as a line on incredible psychic potential.
Yes, something like that.
This character always benefits from cover.
Yeah, I mean, if that proves too good, I could see you dropping like a stamina or 2 from him, maybe making 6/6 or maybe
that's why I was thinking 7/6 feels better. But I'm okay with that. And then obviously Mind Space, with the changes we made to the Space Gem, that becomes more viable on him. And actually, he goes then with the Mind Gem, he becomes a really good control piece, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because he's generating 3 power a turn, a guaranteed 1 power off his builder.
Well, he's generating 4 a turn.
4 a turn even, yeah. So I like that a lot. Okay, then on to the last 2, and in second place, the next 2 are going to be downgrades for people. The best 4 threat in the game, I believe, Enchantress.
Yep.
She's just too good.
So, like, something we know that's happening is Siren's Call is going to once per turn.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? It just is.
Yeah, we already know that.
That's a trend we've seen with MODOK and Mr. Sinister, so that's just happening. We know that much, right?
Yeah. Which, just to add into as well, Quinn, I think then makes Ebony Maw far more of a niche play, that he's got multiple repositionings in a single turn.
That's why I wanted, Sinister Influence to be guaranteed. That's his thing. He moves people around. He's got the black tongue. He is like very, very sort of a malicious, conniving influencer type.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we know that's happening. Let's have a quick look at her stats. So 225, but again, she has the enchanting. However, this is where your opponent pays the power. So you tax your opponent. If they don't pay 2 power, you then get to use your 5 defense dice. I like that on her card. It means that somebody needs to have the power before they can attack her, really, because otherwise she's going to be rolling those 5 dice. What else is it then that makes her so strong?
Amora's Kiss is really powerful. Like, just being able to walk up to someone and go, "This is my objective now," feels very strong. I wouldn't mind seeing that go to an action.
Oh, okay. I had a different approach, but for me it was a drop. So
So effectively making it cost 1 more power.
Making it cost 1 more power, but I suppose it gives some flexibility as well. But actually, do you know what? It's such a being able to move an asset token or civilian.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind it being just forcing them to drop and it being an action.
Yeah, I mean, like, that in a sense, forcing it to drop could actually be better in some instances where, like, your opponent is all activated at the end of a round and you've got a couple characters left and you just sort of go, right, I'm dropping that. Someone else is going to swing by and grab that and then run away with it. which is why I would prefer for it to go on to Amora herself, but then have it be an action so she can't run away quite as easily with it.
Yeah, she can't walk up, kiss, and then walk away.
Yeah, or she can't like bow someone in,
Yeah.
kiss them, run away, run away. Where now it's bow someone in, kiss them, medium move away. You're now like still probably within about range.
3,
You're definitely
4.
in 4. You're probably about in 3 as well.
Yeah.
Because it's range 1, base, and then a move. Yeah, probably.
And I think that those 2 changes make Amora's Kiss an action, and then as we know, Siren's Call being limited to once per turn, not once per character per turn, brings her in. She's still towards the top of the curve.
She's very good at what she does, and she is an objective-focused character, but she's far less egregious in like what she can do in that sort of setting.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that makes makes good sense, and I think that brings her in line because it really is those 2 abilities that are, there's nothing about her builder or indeed her spender that are, super amazingly good. They're both good, don't get me wrong, but I like that then.
And
so
I just feel like thematically, Amora's Kiss being an action fits in very well with that whole sort of idea of like, whenever you have like the femme fatale character like Amora or Poison Ivy, because we're dipping into DC now apparently. When they do that thing where like they sort of lure someone in and they do the kiss and then they, it's oh no, it's a bad thing. It's always a very slow burn, right? It's never like, a quick snog and she runs off.
Yeah. Well, I also think
very slow. Like it feels like it should take an action for the amount of time it takes to beguile them.
Yeah, I also think that like it's for everybody else, right? It costs something to do, and I get 3 power, but it's either an action in the case of Miles, or there's tactics cards that allow you to move asset tokens. Toad, he can take an asset token off you off one of his own characters, but again, it costs an action. Quicksilver can do it, but there's some things that he needs to do. He needs to have done damage, which isn't always the easiest on Quicksilver. And then it takes up a tactics card slot.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think making it an action makes sense.
And obviously, Black Cat has the exact same thing, and she's a threat less. But I think Black Cat can probably keep hers to not being an action simply because she doesn't have bow.
Yes.
Which means that it's a lot harder for her to actually safely get to within that range 1 of someone.
Yeah. She also doesn't have everything else, the defensive tech and the beam and everything else. So, yeah. Okay, then. Number 1 character that needs changing in the game. Everyone hates her. It's Medusa.
I want you to say her full name, please.
Medusalith Amaquelin Boltagon.
There we go.
So
I like how your northernness came out a little bit at the end.
It did.
You almost wanted to say Bolton.
Bolton, I did, yeah. So 3s across the board, 6 and 6, which I'm okay with. I mean, for me, Braid Bash.
Yeah, it's a bit good, isn't it?
Just a little bit good indeed. So for anyone that doesn't know, Braid Bash kind of defined a new timing piece in the game. So it's a 5 dice range 3 builder, physical, power equal to the damage dealt. If it deals damage, no other trigger, you may move the character if it's size 3 or less, or you may push the character small or short even. And then with a wild, you get a flurry. But with a timings chart, you get to choose which order you do them in. So you can do the push and then flurry, or you can do the Braid Bash, a flurry, which is another attack, and then push the target character twice. And for me, it's that combination, Quinn, that just makes her so powerful in this game.
Yeah, she's really quite egregious. So there are sort of 2 ways you can go about this. First of all, you can just remove the push, and then she's still very good at beating the crap out of people, which I feel like should be sort of her thing. Like she beats people up, and she can reposition allies. That should be her thing.
Yeah.
I also wouldn't mind seeing the flurry require an extra trigger simply because it's already a very good builder.
Yeah, it's not like a rapid fire is it that needs a hit where you're only rolling 4 dice, and you're usually only getting 1 power back for these attacks that have flurries.
Whereas, Medusa's rolling 5 dice, and she's got a built-in reroll, which means she's very likely to get that flurry. She's also quite likely to do 2 or 3 damage with that attack as well, depending on who she's punching.
Yeah.
So I would like to see the push go away, and then this might risk nerfing her too far, which is obviously something we don't want to do, right? No matter how much we hate a character, cough, reality covers cough. I wouldn't mind seeing it be a hit wild for the flurry, just because it's not a major thing. It just means that you're slightly more likely to miss out on getting that second hit.
So I feel like that would be too much, but
that's fair. Yeah,
but what I would like to do is implement your part of hitting a wild, remove the push, remove the attack element of push, but on a flurry, you get to make a second attack, and then after the attack is resolved, you get to push the character away. So it means you get the push, but it stops that attack, push, which is just terrible.
And are you keeping that as an omnidirectional push or a push away?
I think it should be a push away, right? It feels like it should be a push away.
I would prefer to keep it as an omnidirectional push, just simply from a flavor perspective. It doesn't make sense that hair is not.
I suppose hair's doing that. So okay, keep it like that.
Not in any direction, but she can only do it once, and that's if she gets the flurry on a hit and a wild.
Yeah,
so I'm completely fine with that.
And I wouldn't have said that if it wasn't for the fact that she is an inhuman. She can go fishing for those wilds or hits, whichever one it is she needs. So 5 dice, she's likely to roll one of them already. Off 5 dice, you're more than likely going to get at least a hit. You've got a good chance of getting a wild, but then you've got that reroll to fish for it. So I think, for me, that one change to her brings her down to where she should be, which is still a very strong damage-dealing 4-threat piece, just without the ridiculousness of what that timing is. So
and then also she gets a slight buff in the sense that everyone's getting their area attacks buffed. Make that forecast easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that goes down. So guys, there we go. That is our top 20 characters with the latest news from MiniStravaganza that we feel need an errata of some form or another. And you'll notice there that the vast majority of characters need a little tweak here and there just to bring them up. There's 1 or 2 characters that need some big changes. I'm looking at you, Ebony Moore, and also Star-Lord as well. And then there's a few characters in there that need to be just brought down a peg or 2. And that's obviously on top of the 4 characters that we've already had spoiled. Now, I'm going to set myself a little challenge there because I was taking no notes whatsoever throughout this entire video. So first of all, I've got to go back and re-listen to all of this and take everything down of what me and Quinn agreed to. What I'm also going to try and do for you guys is I'm going to make these cards. So over the next week or so, I'm going to try and make each one of these cards for you to use. There'll be a link down in the description below, on the Discord, on the Facebook page once they're done, for you to be able to download them and use them. And if you've got any comments, any feedback on things that work really well, things that don't work, let us know, because it'd be really good to hear them. And Quinn, it may be nice to do a bit of a follow-up video once we've got the actual errated cards through, and we'll see how absolutely miles away we were. Or we'll see if Pagani and Schick nick all of our ideas and implement them as well. So we'll be watching you, AMG,
the entire time, and they're just relaying them all to the printers.
Yeah, well, you know who it is. It's Nagoldar. Nagoldar has access to all of us when we're live streaming or even when we're recording locally. He knows where we live, so
he sees all.
he does see all. Guys, that's it for me and Quinn. Remember 2 things. We've got our September giveaway where you can win a brand new character pack, and we've got our giveaway that we're running between now and next 2 or 3 months, depending on when it actually releases. We're giving away a Hulkbuster. Thank you to the guys at Elysian Games for sponsoring the channel, and more importantly, sponsoring the Hulkbuster. So there'll be a link in the description below to a video. That video will give you all the details you need on how to win a brand new Hulkbuster. Guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.
See ya.